Firstly, I would like to introduce Gina and Kat, our ASL interpreters on the call, for joining us today. Thank you so much to both of you. I'm excited to introduce our trainer. Erica Catherine is a highly accomplished conflict resolution and coaching professional holding a master's degree in biotechnology regulatory affairs with the University of Maryland University College Park and a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Jackson State University. Certified as a Florida Supreme Court County Mediator, a workplace mediator and trainer, and a life coach training institute coach, she brings a diverse skill set to mediate legal cases, address workplace conflicts, deliver training programs, and provide personal coaching. As an ombudsman for the U.S. FDA Office of Regulatory Affairs, Erica navigates complex regulatory landscapes, fosters positive. Oh, apologies. If everyone could just remain on mute, that would be great. Erica navigates complex regulatory landscapes, fosters positive relationships, and facilitates the resolution of conflicts. With that, I will pass it over to you, Erica.
Thank you, Aisha. I appreciate that. I hope you all can hear me and see me. And I have an ambitious schedule for this presentation. And so I'm glad that you all will have additional resources should we not get through with some of the slides. But thank you all for joining me in this session today. For the next 50 or minutes or so, we hope to experience an interactive presentation on embracing conflict and leveraging strengths, the power of self-awareness and conflict management. This presentation will feature tools like defining your dominant conflict style using the Thomas Kilmann conflict instrument, and a 5-step process for conflict resolution that I hope will complement not only this session, but other avenues that you may explore with conflict, especially when it comes to self-awareness. Again, like I said, very ambitious schedule that we have today. We hope to start the presentation, or we will start the presentation with a discussion of conflict, unresolved conflict, along with what is healthy or unhealthy about it. We will then transition into a discussion of what is self-awareness, do you have it, how to get it, the benefits of having it. Then we will discuss embracing conflict and the tools we can use to build self-awareness to resolve conflict. So after becoming familiar with these concepts, hopefully if there's time, we will briefly review an example and discuss some final thoughts. So as we begin our discussion, I think it would be helpful to reflect on what has been your conflict story. How have you managed conflict? If you could just think of one word to express your experience, what would that be? Just hold that one word in your mind for a second. Now that you have that one word, I know you can see I have an activity plan, much like a word cloud that you've seen before, but it's a polling feature I'm using called Menti. And on the slide, you will see some instructions where you can go to the go to the poll by using the link there, or you can just use the QR code with your phone. Either way is fine. So when you have that one word, enter that word into the poll. Here we're going to go and see what we have coming up so far. If anyone has any trouble, please drop it in the chat. I can try to walk you through it, but it should be pretty simple. Scan it with your phone or go to the menti.com and enter that code. You shouldn't have to log in or anything. Oh, looks like, and of course, with all word clouds, the word that's coming up the most will start to be the largest words you see. I see avoid, stressful, exhausting, looks big. Stressful keeps coming up. I do see patience. That's something you definitely need with conflict. You definitely need patience. Uncomfortable. We're going to give you like a few more seconds just to enter in any of your words there. It looks like uncomfortable is winning out. So we're gonna close this one now. And we're gonna close voting at this point and see what we have as our largest word. Looks like uncomfortable, stressful, exhausting, anxiety, somewhat avoid. And to be honest, I've done this presentation several times, and normally avoid is one big word, or avoidance. I see there's two, so maybe if we combine those, it would be a larger word as well. But this is normal. This is normal because as I will talk about further, as human beings, conflict is a part of our experience. And so now that you've thought of your one word, I thank you all for participating in that poll with me. Hopefully today you will start your journey of self-discovery that will help you view conflicts as opportunities for personal growth and team growth, that you can cultivate your self-awareness to better understand your emotions and responses during conflict, and embrace collaborative problem solving to create inclusive resolutions using your strengths. Now that you've started to define your conflict story, let's hear Sarah's conflict story of journey and her journey to self-awareness. Let me know if for some reason you can't hear.
Sarah, a seasoned senior leader in her agency, found herself at a crossroads. Leading a newly formed team in a virtual space, she couldn't ignore the red flags in team dynamics any longer. Awkward silences, palpable tension, frequent interruptions during meetings, and post-meeting emails filled with alternative ideas. These were the warning signs. Sarah had met her team only virtually, relying heavily on them to resolve issues and meet project deadlines. With an in-person summit looming, she held high hopes for a resolution. But when she entered the conference room, reality hit hard. Raised voices and rude exchanges shattered her vision of a collaborative team. This was the turning point in Sarah's story of self-aware leadership. Realizing that avoidance wouldn't solve the problem, she took charge. Sarah embarked on a voyage of self-discovery. Assessments, introspection, and feedback became her compass, helping her understand herself and her influence on the team. With newfound self-awareness, she sharpened her emotional intelligence and pinpointed her strengths and weaknesses, especially in conflict management. But Sarah's journey didn't stop with self-improvement. She inspired her team to explore their conflict styles and engage in team strengths assessments. Sarah embraced a new leadership mindset, one that nurtured open dialogue and actively sought her team's input. Conflicts were no longer dreaded, but seen as opportunities for growth. Over time, Sarah's self-aware leadership catalyzed a remarkable transformation. Team members felt valued, empowered, and heard. Conflicts evolved into catalysts for innovation, and each team member's strengths were acknowledged and harnessed for collective success. In the end, it was Sarah's journey of self-aware leadership that not only transformed her, but also empowered her team to thrive. Remember, self-awareness is the cornerstone of great leadership, and it can lead to remarkable outcomes.
So that's Sarah's
Sarah,
story. Um, and there are four main points in her story that will help illustrate some of the areas we are covering in our presentation today. I think providing the story of Sarah's journey can be seen somewhat fairy tale-ish. I know it's like, wow, all that happened in what period of time. But it is a journey. It's a walk. It's a process. But starting that process, even with very little steps, really can see magnificent results. So again, there are 4 points that I wanted to kind of illustrate in the story about Sarah. One, Sarah, the leader, sensed an issue, an unresolved conflict with her team, but was unsure of how to handle it. Two, the team was having difficulty sharing ideas with each other and mainly only shared them with Sarah. This impacted project deadlines and overall team dynamics. 3, the story has potential conflicts relating to interpersonal dynamics, leadership style, and work style dynamics. 4, this leader found a solution along with her team to handle conflict by building self awareness and leveraging their strengths. So, we're going to try to start that same journey today. But first, let's agree on the meaning of conflict. We have some sense of conflict because of what it means, because we individually defined it with our one word earlier in the, just in the slide before. So think about that definition and the definition I have here. And this is just one of many. But the one important thing I think to think about is, as I said before, that no matter how hard you may try, you won't be able to avoid conflict if you're around other humans. That means some degree of conflict, like I said, is unavoidable. But conflicts and disagreements often occur, or most occur, because of misunderstandings, differences in communication. They also occur because the illusion of communication has happened. So sometimes you think you may have communicated, but you haven't at all. However, it's fully understand conflict, you must understand it in 3 ways, I think. You must understand the context of it, the perception of it, and think about your personal experience with it. I like to say that perception, of course, we know is the lens to which we interpret the world and everything around us. And that varies greatly person to person. One person may perceive a minor disagreement, something as a minor disagreement, while another person may think, wow, it's a significant issue. For example, a disagreement within a close knit team might be handled differently than a team that works more collaboratively or in a competitive environment. You just have to think about all of those things. Like I said, personal experience, past encounters, your perception. But one thing I want to focus on a little bit more is those past encounters, because when you think about those, we as humans do something else. We can't avoid conflict, but we also create patterns. And so recognizing the patterns that you may have in relation to conflict will greatly help you manage conflict and ultimately resolve conflict. So now that we know a little bit about some of the things, that a definition for conflict, a little bit apart that it's the human experience, we know that. Let's talk about the types of conflict, the context of conflict. Conflict is mostly experienced as either healthy or unhealthy. Of course, the ultimate experience is healthy conflict, meaning it stimulates creativity, innovation, and growth for individual and teams, versus unhealthy conflict that a lot of times causes increased stress. One of the words that we talked about earlier, stress, anxiety, and demotivation. So what comes up for you when I say unhealthy conflict? I bet it's the word stress. If there's other words that we didn't see in our word cloud, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll discuss them later as we go through the presentation. So on the slide now, I have some ideas for what healthy conflict will look like. You may have your own. So think about those as we go through it, this slide that I have here. Um, and like I said, if you have good words for healthy conflict, and like in the word cloud, I think we had one word was patience, and that was a good word, and that would align with healthy conflict versus unhealthy conflict. So on the figure, I describe some hallmarks of healthy conflict that are open communication, honest communication, a focus on the issue or problem, not the person, an acknowledgement of respect for diverse viewpoints, collaborative problem solving with improved outcomes. This becomes a natural fit from what I said before of the benefits of healthy conflict, which are enhanced creativity, personal growth, and strengthen relationships. Now let's consider the opposite of healthy conflict. Okay, we know what has come into your mind with that because we saw some words with the word cloud. But here are some things that I have come up with as well for that you can see on the slide. So negative unhealthy conflict could be defined as conflicts that escalate quickly. They lead to hostility or anger, conflicts involving personal attacks rather than addressing the issue, conflicts that are avoided or suppressed, leading to unresolved tensions, and conflicts that are focused on winning, a lot of times at the expense of others instead of collaboration. So, those are some hallmarks that you can think about when you think about what's healthy conflict that could lead to success and lead to better outcomes versus unhealthy conflict that a lot of times leads to certain consequences. And let's discuss some of those consequences. What are those consequences of unhealthy conflicts? Well, they cause a ripple effect. That's why I have that little water drop there in our workplaces and organizations. Unhealthy conflicts can lead to emotional stress, anxiety, depression, demotivation. They also can lead to absenteeism, unscheduled leaves, or absences. They can, of course, decrease productivity. We said that, a lack of team cooperation. And at their worst, they lead to resignation from a role. Sometimes this could also look like the common phrase that's going around now of quiet quitting. It could look like that. Unhealthy conflicts that go unresolved in a workplace significantly impacts productivity of individuals and organizations. Learning to recognize these signs of unhealthy conflict will help us all to better determine how to manage and potentially resolve it. Now let's discuss some types of conflict that happen in the workplace. Now that we have some ideas of healthy, unhealthy, let's look at what types of conflict may occur in the workplace and some examples. You see on the slide some different types and their definition: leadership, work style, interpersonal, task based, and value and ethics. So you have those definitions there, but I like to toss up some examples. Uh, do does anyone, maybe you can put in the chat, is any one of these types of conflicts resonating with any of you? Maybe you experienced it. Maybe you want to know an example or more about it. Um, Aisha, do you see anyone's dropped anything in the chat about these types of conflicts?
Let me see. Okay, so I'm seeing a couple of people say interpersonal, leadership, interpersonal work style, task based.
Okay, so the leadership conflict is much like what we saw in Sarah's story. In Sarah's story, she was a leader that preferred a hands-off leadership style, allowing her team a little autonomy. While her employees, if you noticed, kind of seemed like they wanted a more structured approach. It was kind of a clash. So this clash in leadership can lead to sometimes misunderstanding, conflict, and decreased productivity. So learning how to name it and recognizing it is very helpful to knowing how to resolve it. Work style conflicts could be one team member is highly organized and follows a strict schedule, while another team member is more flexible and they like a less structured work environment. And you put those two together on a team, sometimes they can cause friction because it causes friction because one expects certain deadlines, certain expectation, while another may have another approach for deadlines and expectations. And so sometimes those type of work style conflicts cause those types of clashes. Um, One clash that people may not recognize sometimes are values and ethics conflicts. And that can be where an organization may face I would say like one thing I know with FDA sometimes we'll face where a regulatory team suggests maybe exaggerating authorities a little bit to make sure compliance, make sure a firm is in compliance, while the science review team is very strict and they want open communication with the company. No exaggerations are needed because we have our authorities. And this could lead to debates about even the organization's integrity and individual value and integrity and how that should be expressed. So each of these workplace conflicts has its own unique characteristics and impact productivity and team dynamics differently. Effectively addressing these conflicts involves understanding their nature and applying appropriate conflict resolution strategies to reach positive outcomes. So, one way, at least one probably of many, that I say that I'm proposing will help us to do just that is building self awareness. Again, there are many approaches to handling healthy and unhealthy conflict, but self awareness is one that encompasses them both. Specifically, using it to leverage strengths is one strategy that we will discuss today to try to reach some of those positive outcomes. The information in this presentation about self-awareness is heavily influenced by the work of Dr. Tasha Urin and her book called Insights. Insight, the surprising truth about how others see us, how we see ourselves, and why the answers matter more than we think. In her book, Tasha Urin defines self awareness as the ability to see ourselves clearly, to understand who we are, how others see us, and how we fit into the world around us. This definition has two primary components: a private or internal self awareness and a public external self awareness. External self awareness, this component relates to our ability to perceive how others view us and the impact our behavior has on them. In the context of conflict resolution, external self awareness plays a pivotal role in understanding how our actions, our words affect the people involved in the conflict with us. It also allows us to access the perceptions and emotions of others in the conflict, and that's crucial. That's a crucial part of empathy and effective communication. Internal self awareness, this aspect involves recognizing and understanding our thoughts, feelings, values, preferences. In reference to conflict, internal self awareness is crucial because it enables us to comprehend our emotional responses and motivations during conflict. These two types of self awareness are independent of each other, yet they are both required to be truly self aware. Speaking of being truly self aware, how many of you think you are truly self aware? We're gonna do a little question at this point. For the question, you will see, of course, if you haven't logged on to the survey already, just scan the QR code to do so. But if you have, you should already see the next question and you can populate it, enter what you think. If you don't know the scale there, you will see 0. 100% means you're just totally mastered. You know you're self-aware. You don't even know why you came today. You're just out of exercise just to see what I have to say. You know exactly what you're doing. 0 means you really have no reference for self-awareness. You just really want to know what this means, and you really want some more information. So I'm sure some of you will fall somewhere in the middle. Here, let's see what we have so far. We have some good participation. Seems like most of you think you're pretty self-aware. We have one person who's thinking, slightly. And we have 5 people who are just superstar dynamic, and this could be the case. I'm not questioning that. We're gonna give it a few more seconds, and then we're gonna close voting.
Erica, a couple of people asked for the name of the author and name of the book. If you could, I could just drop it in the chat.
Okay,
I just don't remember what it
Dr.
was.
Urich, Tasha Urich, and that's EURICH. And the
Okay.
name of the book is Insight. And so it has a subtitle, but the name is Insight. And so I've closed the poll, and we see that wow, 40% or 40 people rather think that you are 75% self-aware. Great. 5 people think they're 100% self-aware. 19 people think they're 50% self-aware. One person says they're 25% self-aware. So a lot of self-awareness going on here. Let's see where we are. Go back to our presentation. And let's see what Dr. Urich found in her research. In her research and analysis, 10 to 15% of people really are self-aware. The study, as I said, this was a scientific study in which 10 separate investigations with nearly 5,000 participants were examined. And the concept of what is self-awareness really was expressed to them. They went through different testing, they went through a lot of different quality measures, and they found that even though people believed they were self-aware, that self-awareness was truly a kind of a rare quality. Again, like I said there, they only estimated 10 to 15% of people they studied fit the criteria for self-awareness. This research also showed that the lack of self-awareness in the workplace increases unhealthy content by 30%. Now let's hear directly from Dr. Urich herself to see what she says about her research.
Do we know who we are? That is one of the most important questions we can ask. And our research shows that 95% of people think that we know ourselves, we think we're self-aware, but the real number is closer to 10 to 15%. So what I talk about in my work is that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's something we should be really cognizant of and really try to improve as much as we can, because most of us have a lot of work to do. The reason I call self-awareness the meta skill of the 21st century is that everything we need to know how to do in today's world is entirely dependent on our level of self-awareness. So you think about communication or influence or collaboration, all types of skills that we need in the workplace. We can only be as good at each of those as we are self-aware. And so if we work on self-awareness, it has a ripple effect to almost everything in our lives. So I would give 3 tips to increase self-awareness. Number 1, we have found in our research that people who are self-aware tend to have a really open and curious mindset about themselves. They're less likely to beat themselves up and more likely to say, well, what went wrong? What can I learn? So I think that's one piece. The second thing is to do what I call a daily check-in. And those are really easy, but it can really lead to a lot of insight. So at the end of every day, ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, what went well today? 2, what didn't go well? And 3, what can I learn to be smarter tomorrow? So that's number 2. Number 3 is something I call the dinner of truth. And since we're talking about leaders and organizations, maybe I'll call it the power lunch of truth. And what you do is you find someone that will tell you the truth, that you trust will be honest with you, that you know has your best interest at heart. You take them to a meal and you ask them, what do I do that's most annoying to you? And then you sit back and bask in the insight, try to not be defensive or to be as non-defensive as possible, and use that as a way to catalyze even more feedback.
So I show that video because I really think it helps us to understand some ways to which we can build that self-awareness. We don't always have to do things that, like I said, cost us money, like to go to some of the testing centers and do those 360 analysis. While helpful, not saying that that's not helpful, but you can do 3 steps, those 3 steps that Dr. Urich talked about, to just really start to gain an idea of how self-aware you really are. Now, as another part of her research, Dr. Urich talks about the leadership, 4 leadership archetypes that build a self-awareness leadership style. And they're called seekers, introspectors, aware, and pleasers. And they all have their different opportunities for uh, improvement, as well as things that they do well. So I just encourage you to look over that research. We won't go through all of them for sake of time, but they are on the slide. So make sure that if you're interested in that research and knowing a little bit more about it and maybe what type of archetype you may be, please go and look at that a little bit further. So as we go now, you may be saying, okay, this seems like a good strategy. It seems like that this might be helpful for conflict as well as other things in my life to become more self-aware, implementing self-awareness in different situations. So what are some barriers to actually implementing this? What could happen? Why wouldn't I do this? Or why wouldn't I be successful at doing it rather? I've identified 5 common barriers, but you may have your own list. Think about what those may be for you. If you feel comfortable doing so, you can put them in the chat as we go over the slide. I will go over a couple main ones right now, though, and that's like blind spots. And I think doing the lunch of truth or dinner of truth, whichever one you prefer, I think that is what's going to be one thing you can do to be cognizant of some of those blind spots. Blind spots are the hidden corners of our perception where unconscious biases and ignorance may lurk. And when I say ignorance, it's just things you don't know, things you're not sure of. They lead us astray sometimes without our, being knowledgeable of them. Overcoming this barrier requires seeking feedback and introspection to uncover the hidden biases that we may have. Defensiveness, that's a big one. It's resistance to feedback or criticism. Defensiveness is a thick barrier and it hinders our own self-awareness. When we react defensively to feedback or criticism, we block our own growth. To break through that, we must embrace feedback as a valuable tool for self-improvement. Now, remember, even when Dr. Urich says, go to someone you trust and know who may have your best interests at heart. Because, all feedback is not great feedback. And we need to learn to recognize that. But we don't need to be defensive of any feedback, at least not initially. So those are 2 big ones. Aisha, did anyone put in the chat any others that they think may be a barrier to self-awareness?
Let's see. Blind spots, lack of feedback, emotional traumas. Oh, it looks like someone asked a question. What's the difference between 3 aware and 4 pleaser?
Oh, back in the other slide on the 3 aware and 4 pleaser. So with the different ones, the aware leader is they know who they are and they know what they want out of life. They know what they want out of another person's opinion. If you're this type of leader, if you're aware, you empower others by recognizing their strengths and nurturing. You like constructive feedback, you're aware. But one area of opportunity for an aware leader is because they are aware and they have a lot of good, nurturing abilities, they don't always know how to support their team with coaching or, be able to uplift their team to have a greater impact. So sometimes an aware leader may need to just be someone who can share share what they know. And the pleaser leader, they're too focused on what others think and they fail to focus on really what matters to them. So that leader is kind of like the opposite of aware in a little bit because they share everything. They give their whole self to everything, but they don't consider their own feelings. They're not as in tune with their own sense of self. So that person just needs to balance pleasing with leading, and so that they can create a supportive team. Hope that answered that.
And we have another question. Is feedback an opinion?
It can be. It can be an opinion, but many times feedback is telling you how an action you did was received. So it can be an opinion, but because we don't always know how we are seen in a room, we need opinions. But we need opinions from people who, like I said, have our best interests at heart, who have, at hopefully best case, not a bias against us or some bias around us. So that's why it's good to seek others who you feel may have your best interest at heart, people you know you've worked with effectively, that you've have a good relationship with. Sometimes people say, well, those people are not going to tell me anything, but sometimes they will. Have you asked? That's the question. Have you asked? Have you asked those people who you work with, who you have a good relationship with, who you know, for the most part don't have a bias against you? Have you asked those persons, what do I do right? What do I do wrong? How do I show up in a room? How am I perceived by others? That's not something you can always know. It's something you hope for, but you don't always know that. So you need that feedback. You need how others perceive you, because perception, remember I said how conflict is perceived differently by others. Perception is different, and so you want to try to make sure that however you're showing up is how you want to be perceived, at least for the most part. Nothing here is going to be 100%. It's going to be a journey, but I think it's a journey that we all should undertake. Any other questions?
We have a question regarding self-confidence. Can you say more about self-confidence?
Self-confidence is a very good thing. But over excessive self-confidence is funny how that can be not great. It's ironic, right? Like self-confidence is good because you have a sense of self and you're confident, and hopefully you're confident in how you're showing up. You're confident in your abilities. You're confident in how you are in the world. But like I said, ironically, an overconfidence, which is different from self-confidence, but it's excessive self-confidence, can be an obstacle to self-awareness, because when you have over self-confidence, it's hard for people to tackle. You have a barrier. It's hard for people to interact with you because you know you're doing good. You know you're right. So to tackle this barrier, you need to nurture humility and a willingness to admit your limitations. But healthy confidence includes acknowledging areas for improvement. So if you have a healthy sense of confidence, you're always going to acknowledge areas for improvement. I'm sure you may have noticed I go and do presentations, I train, but I have a lisp bad, and I'm hoping the interpreters can catch the words I'm saying. But I haven't let that stop me, and I try to improve all the time. And you can only improve by doing. So that's something that you have to acknowledge and be okay with. But be confident. Be confident in your abilities, but also acknowledge the areas for improvement. So recognizing and addressing these barriers, like I said, is the first step towards a deeper level of self-awareness. By actively dealing with these challenges through reflection, feedback seeking, and commitment to growth, we dismantle these obstacles and enhance our self awareness. As I said, self awareness is an ongoing journey. And each time, we make a step towards it, we bring ourselves closer to a better understanding. So I'm going to go talk about a little bit more about the power of self-awareness. It's a great thing. Like I said, I do believe it's one of probably many tools that you can use in general conflict resolution and conflict management situations. And these are some of the power points that I say here. I'm going to just go over a couple for sake of time, just so that we can get to some of the other things. But enhanced emotional intelligence, improved communication, personal growth, definitely are all catalysts that help us do that perfect transition into a deeper self-awareness. And so here we're going to learn how to embrace conflict and self-awareness together. We're going to bring them together now that we have a familiarity of what's going on here, of where we are with conflict, where we are with self-awareness. Let's talk about some tools we can use to actually bring these things to life in our lives. And one tool would be using the Thomas Kilmann method. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a strength assessment quickly. And we're going to hope that, if you need some additional help, specifically after the presentation or at any point, seek peer support and seek coaching, and be open to feedback, of course, as we've said. So who here has heard of the Thomas Kilmann method? You can just put yes or no in the chat, the modes. I'm sure many people have heard of it. It's taught quite a bit, but we're going to talk about it in light of self-awareness because, and is it a lot of people, Aisha, have already kind of heard of this method before?
It looks like we have a couple of yeses, but most of them are nos.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah. Mhm.
wow. Well, behavior scientists Kenneth Thomas and Ralph Kilman developed the Thomas Kilmann conflict mode. This is an assessment that has identified 5 styles to responding to conflict. Each has their own predominant conflict style or mode that we use when we meet or engage conflict. We all have our certain mode. We may not recognize it as a mode, but it is. So like I said, they've done research and they found that these are the 4 common ones. You may have a combination of both or 1 or 2 of them. Some of them lean towards high cooperativeness, others lead towards collaboration, while others may lead towards a high assertiveness. So emphasizing the pursuit of goals and what you want to do in the conflict may also lead you to know which conflict style may be appropriate, because none of the conflict styles are really bad. It's how they're used and how you can use them as tools to help you gain better position in a conflict, or at least create a better outcome for whatever interest you may have. But one key to using these modes is self-awareness. And let's hear what Thomas Kilmann himself says about this.
Well, the first step in learning to use each of the modes is, of course, self-awareness. I have to be aware that certain modes I'm using too much and too little. The ones too much I want to tone down. The ones I'm using too little I want to make more use of so I have a larger repertoire. So self-awareness comes first. Second, it's practice. There are role-playing exercises. When I worked in classrooms or workshops or training situations, I would have exercises where people can play out the different roles, even exaggerate them. So you tell some people who are low in competing, I want you to now, here's a topic, I want you to make a point to the rest of the group why it's so important to see things your way. What are the arguments? And put some emotion into it, put some passion into it. You really want to get this your way. How would you do this? They practice and they have fun. The person who is low on avoiding and wants to beef that up has to practice by saying, I'm not ready to talk about this now. I need more time. I have to think about it. I want to discuss this topic with a few of my friends. Can I get back to you next week? And they start learning the words, the language they use to enact each of the 5 modes. Now, let me stress, there are many different ways of enacting the 5 modes. Some are better than others. So, for example, with competing, you can yell and shout at someone and slam your fist on the table in order to get your way. That's competing. You can also say, I want to share with you why this topic is very important to me and why it's so important for us to do it this way. And if you give me a chance, please hear me out, and maybe you can see that I'm onto something here. That's competing too. Avoiding. You can say, I don't like this conversation. I'm not going to sit and talk with you anymore about this. You get up, you walk out of the room, and you slam the door. That's avoiding. Or avoiding is also saying, I need some more time to think about it. Can we discuss this? Can we decide next week? Would that be okay? Also avoiding. So I have found that as people learn to practice role-playing the modes, If they learn to enact each mode with care, sensitivity, and respect, they're more likely to be effective.
Again, like I said, these learning about these modes starts with self-awareness. And competing, doc, Dr. Kilman probably spoke about it better than we will today, but I think I put this little illustration here of a fish eat fish mentality, because the style of competing is marked by high assertiveness and low cooperativeness. If a person consistently uses this style, they may come across as aggressive or confrontational or maybe even intimidating. But a competitive style is an attempt to really gain a power or position to implement change in a situation many times. And I think Dr. Kilman, like I said, explained it well. But when would you think you might use this type of approach? Is it appropriate to ever use? What do you think? And normally I listed some more comments in the chat, but we might be need to kind of move ahead. But if you have a comment that you see, Aisha, that you think I should address, definitely let me know. But some roles here, sometimes I've put some times here on the slide. You may have others that you may think of, but you can use competing, or competing can be used, or maybe should be used when you need to make a quick decision. It's an emergency and it's vital. You don't have a lot of time to seek consensus and opinions. Maybe when a decision is unpopular, but it really needs to be made. That's a time where also you might have to use a competing style. So there, like I said, there's other styles here. These are just two examples. Avoiding. I think Dr. Kilman also explained this one well in the video. And this style was, I think, somewhat observed in Sarah's story that we put out earlier. You can see she kind of avoided the conflict at first, really knew something was going on, but didn't really feel she wanted to address it. So that's an avoiding. Some ways sometimes when this style could be appropriate, it's just when the issue is trivial, when it seems to be more pressing matters that you may need to attend to, and you're like, I won't take that on. I think we see this a lot. At least I can only speak for myself, but I see it a lot for me. And when I'm dealing with my daughter and my husband, sometimes something seems to be very important, or something I need to think about, not very important to me or not very important to them, really. So I may avoid the conflict between them two when they have it. So that's the kind of thing that happens when it's just really not a pressing issue. If sometimes when you feel like people need to calm down, gain perspective, that's another time when you might want to use avoiding as a strategy. So avoiding conflict is not always a bad thing. It's mainly based on timing for the confrontation. Sometimes it's just more strategic to let others cool down before addressing the conflict. Or sometimes it's really not that important to you. And there's another style you can also use for that. And we're going to come on top of that, accommodating. This style is low assertiveness and high cooperativeness. This is when something seems very important to someone else, but not as important to you. So you're like, I'm going to let you have that one. I'm going to let you go with that one. This is a personal style. It's where you want to keep the peace. You want to preserve the relationship when you use this style. But like I said, no, none of these styles are what you want to use all the time. You need to think about the situation. Be self-aware, meaning you know what you want. You can see what the other person's emotions are going through, and you decide, I think I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave this one to accommodate. I'm gonna let you have your way. So you use this style when you need to maybe even get a better position to be heard. Sometimes you ever have those times where you think something may be wrong, but you're not exactly sure what it is. And you're saying, I'm going to let this go now, but later on, I'm going to think about that and kind of figure out what's going on later. So you may use accommodating to figure out, to let yourself get a better position to be heard, and figure it out later. Or when an issue, like I said, is more important to someone else than you, or when you want to build a relationship. And sometimes that gives strengthening to have social credit in a situation. Social credit usually means I had one person give an example during one of these presentations, like when you let your boss feel like they've won an argument, or they have uh, created the best situation, and you go along with it because you want to build some social credit for later on for when it's evaluation time. So I don't know if you want to do that, but that's what someone had suggested before. So these are different situations. Like I said, you may have your own based on your own self-awareness of when you want to implement these styles, but these are just some ideas of when you could, or when it's most effective. Collaborating. This style combines high assertiveness with high cooperativeness. This is the collaborative style. It's like it says collaborating. This is when sometimes people see this as the best style because it's more win-win. I think a good analogy for a collaboration style is when they give the example of the orange, like two people wanting to get an orange, and they're fighting over an orange, and they when they discuss and talk about it, they found out that one person may wanted the peel for baking and the other person wanted the juice for drinking, so they both got what they want. Or they could have used, and this is a style that you can think about in those situations when you have time to talk to the person, discover their interests, finding, types of interest. Sometimes, like I said, can be very time consuming, but you could also, people say, win-win styles is compromise. Compromise, I say win-win, and people say win-win, and I have it here, but sometimes compromise is lose-lose in some regards. Because think about that orange situation. If I had just cut the orange in half, then each person would have got only half of what they wanted instead of 100% of what they wanted. So you might say, well, why don't you just always compromise? Well, sometimes you don't have time. Sometimes you might not have that time that it takes to really find out what those interests are in a situation. So a compromising style demonstrates that you're willing to sacrifice some of your goals while persuading others to give up a little part of their own. Compromising does maintain the relationship, and it takes a little less time, like I said, than collaboration. And where splitting the difference is sometimes the better option, especially, like I said, in sake of time. And I think I give that example here of some of the examples that you can use. So here we went through the um, Thomas Kuhlman method. That's one tool. Another tool is your strengths. I know I provided a PDF for this presentation, so you can reference it as we talk about this slide now with the 24 character strengths. I added this brief discussion of leveraging character strengths in this conflict management talk because there are inherent qualities that play a pivotal role in managing conflict effectively. Aisha, did you say something? I heard.
Oh, no, I didn't. That might be
Oh,
someone else. I'll just double check the
okay.
microphones.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. And so character strengths are positive qualities that reside in each of us. They reflect our core virtues and values, guiding our thoughts, actions, and interactions. They are unique attributes that make us who we are. So applying our character strengths at work isn't just about recognizing them, it's about creating the right environment to leverage them to their fullest. And here are three ways to leverage them to your fullest in the workplace. You have to first think about psychological safety. Is it a fertile ground in which our strengths can grow? In the environment where psychological safety is nurtured, team members, um, they feel comfortable being themselves. They can display vulnerability to make mistakes, and they can take risks without being fear of judgment. The next place to leverage, when you can leverage your strengths effectively in the workplace, when you can have meaningful conversations with leaderships. This is more than just idle chit chat. This is where employees can actually engage higher ups in discussions about their strengths and understanding how their unique qualities impact the work and the organization as a whole. And lastly, we have organizational commitment. This is where an organization actively invests in developing their employee strengths. It involves initiatives that support and are the activation of strengths that come through. This is the difference between an organization encouraging you to take a strengths assessment and you never hear about it again, versus you take a strength assessment, people are actively engaging you with your strengths, you're talking about them in meetings and say, hey, you're really strong in this, we're going to have you to do this, you're assigned in this area, why don't you gather the people together with different strengths and be able to move forth assignments in those ways where it's actually being used versus something that's basically being talked about. So if we proceed on this journey, I have a little 3-step video that I had for you to talk about, but it's basically the same thing. It's just saying how to activate these strengths. I'm going to just skip this video for this particular point in time, and I'm going to skip this particular reflection as far as showing it, but I want you to think about your strengths and think about what one or two that you may have. And I want you to put one on the word cloud because we may look at it at the end if we have some time. So if you are still in the menti.com, or if you scan the code there, you will see the word cloud for the list of strengths. So I want you to just put one of them if you can, the one that's more meaningful to you. If you've taken the survey, which I suggested that you take before this presentation, you may know your top 5. And so you can put your top, the very first one that they mentioned for you in this response now. For me, it was of course humor. I don't know if you can tell. Very I see the light. I like to see the light because humor is not just about being funny as a strength. It's about seeing the lighter side of things. It's about looking for the goodness in others. My one of my other top 5 is creativity, and it's about thinking about novel ideas, thinking about how to innovate. So you can use those strengths, like I said, if you've taken those. Feel free to put them in the word cloud. We may look at that before we end the presentation for those who want to stay and see it. So I had planned to kind of do an activity. So if you will get the slides, I'm not sure if the slides will be made available, but if they are, I've also provided with you some detailed instructions on the type on Sarah's team, like her team members and some of the things that actions they took and some of their key strengths are put in that information. So you'll be able to see that and you'll be able to tell what their strengths are and what their conflict style is. So let's go on now to the final thoughts and reflection. You will also see in the presentation a 5-step method for conflict resolution. It's a common method. It just tells you how to maybe start with identification of your conflict issue, and then it tells you after you've identified it, now you need to reflect on maybe what kind of conflict style you want to approach the situation with. Then you start the conflict conversation. Then you decide to brainstorm with your conflict partner and decide what the next steps are to do. And then you finalize those steps by making an agreement with each other on how to move forward, whatever that situation is. So some final thoughts on building conflict awareness in situations that are crucial. I think from today's presentation, you can see that these are some things you can think about as final thoughts. When you approach conflict, pause, reflect. Take a minute to think about your strengths and try to leverage them. Identify your conflict styles and any triggers you may have. Learn your patterns. Remember I said we as humans, we can't avoid conflict and we love to create patterns. So know your patterns. Be able to know how you respond and how you react. And if that response is not appropriate, adjust. Seek feedback, different perspectives. We talked about confidence and how you can be overconfident. Learn perspective from others. Actively listen when you get that feedback and show empathy when possible. Practice these activities. Also include mindfulness in some of the activities I think will be helpful to help you start to really get deeper into your self-awareness. You can do activities also like journaling and deep breathing in those pauses and reflections that you may have. Now, I know we rushed a little bit through the end, but definitely you'll have the slides. I think I provided enough information where you can really get where we were going. And here are some of the references for the presentation, the book that I talked about, the insight, as well as the VAI character strength survey that I encourage you to take, and some other books that I think will be helpful for your review. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time that you took with us today. And if there's any time for questions, I don't know, I think I'm over my time. I definitely will be here to answer those. And I have put up the character strengths. Seems like fairness is a big one, and I would think that, especially for us who working in government agencies.
Hey Erica, this is Aisha. Thank you so much. I just noticed in the chat someone mentioned that the presentation we provided them through the invite is not the same as this one. This one looks like it has more information, maybe towards the latter end. Could you send me this version and I can attach it to the presentation and agendas page? That way everyone can access the most up-to-date version.
Oh, yes, definitely. I think I may have made a few changes for the videos, when I added the videos in and different things too.
Got it. Okay. I think it may have been some of the last slides. There was some additional information. I didn't fully cross-check just now, but whatever your newest version is, just send that over and I'll do the attachments.
Okay.
But we can hang around for any questions or anything like that that anyone might have. This was a great session. Thank you so much
It's normally a 90-minute session I do with breakout, and I tried to condense it to 60 minutes because I thought, oh, I can do it in 60 minutes. And normally I can, but it is. It happens when it happens. I love the engagement. So I feel engagement over just going through information. Because, it's best to engage and get those points down, so that you can really know. Because I feel like I did skip a couple of slides, but I feel like because we talked, that you guys will understand, what those things are.
Exactly. And I know a couple of people mentioned that they would love to experience the 90-minute session.
Oh, yeah, we do a
So
breakout and we really get a chance to get into deep discussion about self-awareness. But this is the intro, and I really hope you guys got a lot out of it. You got resources that you can follow up with and build on this self-awareness. It's really it's been helpful for me in my life, as I mentioned that I know I have some strengths and weaknesses, and it's really helped me to get a little bit out of my shell and move forward and with successful interventions in my profession, as an ombuds. But there's no other questions. Thank you all so much for your attention and your interactivity today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Juliet, to answer your question, the sessions on Thursday do not relate to this session. They're separate sessions. So it won't be the same. It won't be a part two. Not for the forum, at least.
Maybe another time we'll do a
Right. Don't want to promise too soon, but I'm sure we will coordinate with each other and work on something. So keep an eye out.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will be signing off now. Aisha, thank you all so
That's
much.
great. Thank you,
Take care.
Erica. We really appreciate it. You did a fabulous job. So thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. And thank you, interpreters. Thank you, Kat. Appreciate it.